Thank you for staying with us. Straight away, let's kick the second conversation we're having on TMI this morning, the 2020 budget. You know, as hinted earlier when we opened the show this morning, it sounds great knowing that the Senate is saying everything else being equal, this piece of legislation will be passed by next week, and hopefully the president will assent in good enough time so implementation can start almost immediately. Now, joining me to make sense of this discussion are three gentlemen. Of course, there's still Destiny Wobble right in the middle, but I have Friday Ogira here, Esquire, who is also joining us. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be back here.
Next, just after Destiny, is Victor Ekwase, is the risk manager for Alliance Nigeria Insurance PLC. Thank you for coming as well. We appreciate you. Great. I want to start with you, gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Victor. Budgeting in this country has been a challenge for a long time. You are in the insurance sector. One way or another, it does rub off ultimately. What have been your concerns over time about our budgetary process in Nigeria?
Okay. If you say recent times, when I say recent now, I'm talking about maybe in the last 8-10 years.
Okay.
Budgeting has not been the way we should have it. I remember when we were growing up, usually the budget for Nigeria is usually announced to the country in the first day of the first year, of the month of a new year.
Yeah.
And with that, everybody knows exactly how the year will pan out in fiscal terms. But for some time, most times, this budget doesn't get passed until even middle of the year. And that calls for concern in terms of budget implementation. There's one thing to budget, all right? There's one other thing to implement. And if you don't implement, that means the nitty-gritty of it, the effect of it on the average Nigerian will not be felt, so to speak. Nobody will feel the impact, and there's also room for corruption, you know, because who knows whether anybody will remit whatever they didn't spend back to the national coffers.
That's been a concern, really, on spent funds being remitted. There has, over time, been the back and forth between the legislature and members of the cabinet, especially ministers, to refund or, as it were, return unspent funds. Maybe that's a conversation we can have at some other point. But Destiny, when you look at our budgetary process, funding, he already talked about implementation. Of course, you cannot implement without having the funds readily available. Two things are very key about that. First is we have to rely heavily on oil, monies from oil, all right, crude oil, that is. And then, of course, we have to do a lot of borrowing. So that borrowing element is always very strong. What do you think is really peculiar about funding the 2020 budgets when ultimately passed?
There's nothing novel in the budget.
Compared to the previous ones?
There's no novelty. The only novelty I noticed is the timing of passing the budget. If they do pass it this time, the estimates, the benchmark crude to sell in the last 4 years has been between 1.7 million to 1.9 million barrels per day. But this budget is hinged on 2.1 million barrels per day.
That's an increase, isn't it?
It's a benchmark. If you use your past record, I say in the last 5 years, between 1.7 million to 1.9 million, achievable, produced.
Beyond the benchmark.
Beyond the benchmark. Now you are now using 2.1 million. On what basis did you increase it? That's the question. Okay? And even that budget, the previous budget, we only achieved about 60% implementation in the last 10 years.
Somebody said that's
because of lack of funds. Because of lack of funds. Okay, now you are increasing it. On what basis are you increasing it to 2.1 million? I think it's too optimistic, you know. The budget is too optimistic. And then it's also hinged on the VAT, the increase, and some other small things, which has not been approved by the Assembly yet. You know, VAT increase was predicted to be from 5% to 7.5%. And then the National Assembly must approve it too, for it to come into effect. And so it's based on so much no standard facts, just figures to create an impression that the government is expecting a lot of money. The truth is this: the Nigeria does not have the capacity yet to expand that budget in a more pragmatic manner. What the figures on which it is based are hypothetical. They are not close to reality. And so that explains why we always see our reserves going down, you know, because we don't have a lot of money to fund the budget, so we find other sources. And so, to me, why it is good on paper, Nigerian budget is increasing. That alone itself is also a weakness because the Nigerian budget is just $30 billion. South Africa's budget is $150 billion. You know, for this economic size of Nigeria, Nigeria is about a $400 billion economy. The ratio of budget to economy is barely less than 10%. For US, it's 20%. For other countries, advanced countries, between 25 to 30%. So Nigeria is a small, the budget is still very small and narrow for the size of our economy. So we need more comprehensive tax system to ensure that we get more money to make the budget really solid. What we still depend on primary products like crude oil and things like that. So most of where we get our money from to fund the budget, they are easily affected by shocks, international shocks. Okay. If anything happens to the price of oil, the budget suffers. So we need a more comprehensive plan, like a 5-year plan, to, objectively, strategically, look for ways to shore up the revenue base.
Don't you think that was the reason the government in 2017, for example, probably came up with the MTEF, the medium term, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the RGP? That's supposed to help strengthen our economy on these fronts, isn't it?
Yes, it was designed that way, but it's not about the plan. It's about what is in place.
Okay.
What has been the percentage increase in the revenue of Nigeria between that time you talked about and now? It is negligible. The revenue of Nigeria has not significantly improved despite the plan. We need big shifts in our revenue patterns. For example, we still highly depend 90% on crude oil. Even tax, the tax we get, the amount of tax. The federal government queried the IFRS chairman recently for not meeting revenue target. So what the federal government is trying to do is to stifle the small tax base that we already have, trying to find a way to take more money from the existing businesses. Whereas what we need is to diversify the economy and create more tax bases.
I'm going to talk to you about the tax nets. The tax nets in a bit. But let me come to Barrister Friday Ogirahi. The budgetary issue in this country has always been very controversial. Some persons have even told me off the record that it will appear budget is Christmas for many of those who are in power, particularly the ministers themselves, because they feel once the budget is passed, then it becomes a part of the national cake that you can split and split and split, and everybody gets their cut from it. How do we create a system that helps to run circles around these elements that chop off at a budgetary process?
Well, first, let me applaud the way and manner my friend here has analyzed our budgetary process in this country. Like he mentioned, which I readily agree with, it is a mere formality. It has become an annual holo ritual, something to do about fulfilling all righteousness. Not so much about realizing the content and spirit of the said budget document, as it were. If you look at the 2020 budget presentation by President Muhammadu Buhari, you read through it, it makes a very beautiful prose. But at the end of the day, like he mentioned, it ends there. But by and large, coming to the question you asked, I think we have to look at the structural defect, the capacity of those that will manage the so-called budget. And when you are talking about those that will manage the budget, you are talking about representation in government, because you need the government to be able to manage the budget. So, and you look at where are these people coming from? Who are those that represent you? What is their capacity? What is their level of qualification? What vision do they hold? Because all these things matters, you know. More often than not, what we call Nigerian budget are merely to service the elite of the society. I think this is about the 5th budget that President Muhammad has presented. It did for his first term, right. And now this is the first one he's presenting. And you want to ask yourself, how has this impacted on the common man on the street? Because if that budget does not touch the common man on the street, it does not address basic social issues, issues of poverty, issues of bordering on healthcare, education. If I still tune my television and I see a Nigerian begging for hands to be able to treat a particular ailment, then I stand to discredit whatever budget, you know, that the government will present, talking about improvement in health services and delivery. Because if it does not touch the people, then it is meant to service, like I said, the elite of society, particularly those that are in government. You know, that's why you see that so much of this money is still one that is meant at sustaining a very luxurious appetite of government and government officials. So that for me is critical. We must have a system in place where leaders, you know, that like I said, will handle this budget, will actually have a focus and a direction of how they are going to manage the budget to satisfy the yearnings of society and the people. For as long as budgetary proposals and as well implementation does not address this fundamental problem, like I said before, it remains just a hollow ritual. Let us be seen to be doing it. The one budget will present it and all that. Then it calls for the issue of budgetary discipline and all of that. It also comes and remind you of the very bogus federal arrangement that we have. Right. You know, how much of this money actually goes to the local government, how much goes to the state and all of that. Like I think there was heavy weather made of the fact that, oh, we are diversifying. We are diversifying, but for me that is hypocritical, because we actually know that this so-called diversification is more or less a theoretical statement, not so much about what is realistic and what is available. You know, because we are talking about diversification, you should also match it with the fact that we, for instance, as those state people, or as a state component of a federal country, as it were, as a federation, cannot be waiting all the time to receive handout from Abuja before we do things here. Because diversification starts with the issue of we able to generate. Right. We are able to generate our own resources to be able to meet our own vision, our own program, our own policies, and all of that. So the moment we still have a federation where people, states and local government wait, you know, every month they are looking forward to capital receipts from the federation before they can implement program, then you can't be talking seriously about diversification. Okay. How many of these states in Nigeria today actually have their own real sectors that provide
beyond the usual means of IGRO? Victor, I want to come to you now. You know, Friday here just talked about the fact that this has become like a hollow ritual. Maybe by way of trying to move away from that pattern, the members of House of Reps are saying, let's do an upward review of what we allocate to capital projects. They're saying, going forward, capital projects must get at least 40% of the budget. That's a step in the right direction, right?
Yes, on paper.
On paper.
It's good. And for me, like what Destiny said earlier, I think it's time for us to actually, the sincerity of purpose, really move away from funding our budget from just oil. Now, when you take into cognizance the analysis he gave concerning the size of our budget as opposed to the potential of our economy, you can see that they are not even in the same city. All right. Now, increasing our budget, which is around $30 billion, to say 40%, what will be the effect infrastructurally to the Nigerian state, as it were? All right. And again, we also need to take into cognizance the issues of corruption. Where what Barrister Friday said earlier, you know, concerning the budget seems to be something to fund a few people's luxurious appetite. Now, it all boils down to sincerity of purpose and implementation. If they actually implement that 40%, all right, with sincerity of purpose, we'll start from somewhere. But then again, we need to look at it, critically.
I want to take you up again on an issue that Destiny had raised earlier when he talked about VAT being raised from 5% to 7.5%.
Yes.
Of course, that has to be ratified by Congress, as the US people would say, right?
Yes.
But let's look at the informal sector, because the tax authorities in this country have always been concerned about the informal sector. Yes. How do we, for want of better words, drag more people from the informal sector into the tax net to shove up our revenue?
Now, first of all, we need to look at innovation and technology in this area. Like what is obtainable in Edo State, which is just a few rejigging of the system, like the governor will say, all right, we can see that local governments can actually generate more than what they had before.
Yeah.
All right? Now, generation is one thing, like I said. Implementation is another. All right? Now, but truth to be told, I think if every state is innovative in the country, when I say innovative, they are genuine, that ingenuity comes to bear. They look for ways that they have competitive advantage, and they harness them to their advantage. And there's a system that curbs people being frivolous with those funds when they are generated. Everywhere will develop. You will not need to rely on oil to fund our national budget. Let me give you an instance. Malawi's main stay of their economy is copper.
Okay. Which is not very popular.
All right? That's what they fund their country with. The copper deposit in Nigeria is larger than what they have in Malawi.
So what are we doing about us?
We are still saying we are potentials. We need to convert that potential energy to kinetic energy. That's what I'm saying. That's what it is. We need to look at what we are doing. US, they bought Alaska from Russia. The whole of Alaska, the state of Alaska, is an oil well. They've never started harnessing it. They have oil in Louisiana, New Orleans. Right. They have oil in Texas, Arizona, California. But do you hear them talk about funding their budget based on the oil price worldwide? No. They don't. They're even buying from Nigeria to help our economy. That's the truth. All right? So, when we depend on just one part of our economy, so to speak, to fund our budget, all right, it's dangerous.
Okay, let's look at some of these dangers. I mean, Victor has talked about a number of them. Nigeria is highly indebted. Yes. Sometimes when you see the figures, it's like your heart is hanging between your lips.
Of course.
All right, both domestic debts, foreign debts. Yes. I mean, the debt profile doesn't look very good for this country right now. Yes. On top of all that, we're hearing now that foreign reserves continue to deplete. As of yesterday, reports say it's a bit less than $40 billion as it stands right now. That's not something to be excited about. At all. Debt servicing is a big burden on this country as it stands already. And going forward, we understand that we will have to continue to borrow, at least for the foreseeable future. So how do we marry that with the fact that we have to do a smart implementation of our budget?
The issue of debt, for a developing country like Nigeria that is trying to get to 30%, its debt is inevitable. So we must incur a lot of debt. What we should be fighting against is the efficiency of the debt use. Debt is supposed to be leverage to make it easy for you. But when you have corruption, and have a small government that is sitting on top of all the revenue, the government has too much control over the oil money. And so there's a lot of...
You mean government at the center, right?
At the center. There's a lot of rent seeking. All you just need to do is to find out the richest Nigerians, right? Put them on a page, and you see that all of them are government officials, the richest Nigerians. They are far richer than these businessmen, because there's a lot of opportunities for wealth creation by being a public official. Okay? Name one Nigerian president that is not a billionaire, apart from Buhari.
Wealth acquisition.
That's not a billionaire.
Wealth creation. Wealth acquisition.
It's primitive accumulation. So politics is still a way to get rich in Nigeria, because there's a lot of centralization of our revenue base in oil. And oil money is quick money. You sell it, you get the money, you collect money, rent, it's centralized, and then there's opportunities for stealing, a lot of stealing, and there's no trickle down. Before it gets to the average man, it is finished. But
to call it national cake.
It's not national cake.
It's not national cake.
It's supposed to be national cake. The word is a good word, but national cake that is eaten. Let me give you statistics. 5% of Nigerians are richer than the other 95% put together. Of all the money in the banking system, only 11% of the total money in the banking system is owned by 89% of Nigerians. Do you know what it means for 11% of the total funds in the Nigerian banking system to be owned by Nigerians that are now up to 4,000 people? That tells you a lot of inequality there. And then these people sit on top of this oil money, and they just apportion it among themselves. For us to be progressive, what we need is this. I just told you, South Africa, the second largest economy in Africa, the budget of South Africa is $150 billion. South Africa is a small country. Nigeria is 201 million people. Our national budget is just 30 billion. It's too small.
Dollars.
And this 30 billion comes mostly from this oil we are talking about. What we need is bold incentives to encourage investors to come to this country. Listen, Nigeria is not going to go anywhere with that tiny budget. We need mega sources of income. Corporations need to come into this country. Big investors in other critical areas of the economy. He just talked about the resource potential of Nigeria. Nigeria has over 34 pure natural resources in commercial quantity. It's not just to have the resources, to have it in commercial quantity and make money from it. We have steel. We have all the resources. What we lack is the capacity to harness them for wealth. And that is where investors come in. Our policies should be such that people from Japan, US, China come to this country.
We're falling over themselves to come here.
Yes, they will run to this place, make this economy attractive enough. They prefer to go to Rwanda and other countries now. In Rwanda, they make phones now, they make cars there. These are small countries. Nigeria is the biggest market in Africa by design, by population, and some other fundamentals.
Size.
Why are they not coming here? Why are they not bringing billions of dollars to this country? Because when they come and make investments in this country, then government can tax them, and government can show up its revenue base. There's no country that developed on primary commodities. None.
Okay.
None.
I think I'm going to
I don't know if I can add a bit.
Okay, for 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the United States of America, check their history. They converted their potentials to finished goods, all right? And that's what made them so rich that they were on their own until 1914, where they came out and everybody knew that the US was around.
Right.
You're right? So we can also do that. And if you look at it, also that the federal government flexed a while ago, as in closing the border, tells you a lot of our position in the world if we know ourselves.
Okay, hopefully we'll continue to know ourselves. At least we have made one bold move that shows that we know ourselves. Time always fails us to continue to stretch this narrative regarding these very topical issues. I'd love to thank especially my three guests on the show this morning. Friday Ogeri, Esquire, lawyer and politician. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Destiny Owobu is a brilliant statistician and, of course, an economist. Also, thank you so much for your wealth of depth of knowledge you brought on the show this morning. Next is Victor Kwase, is risk manager with Alliance Nigerian Insurance PLC. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.